Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest today is Elyse Dickerson, and she has an interesting company which is called Eosera, and they deal with all sorts of stuff with ear stuff we need to talk about. And we may get into that a little bit later, but when I bring Elyse on, which is going to be about 2 seconds, actually a little bit more, as I have something I want to ask you to do before I bring her on, what I would like you to do is after you watch this show or you listen to the show, if you would go to wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast and give us an honest rating and review, I would really appreciate it. So let's bring Elyse on. We'll start the conversation. Hey, Elyse, how are you today?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I wanted to start off our conversation with something that caught my interest when your booking agency was trying to get you on the show, which was your interest in conscious capitalism and the fact that you guys practice conscious capitalism. So I'm going to bet almost nobody listening to this podcast has any idea what I just said. So could you give us an explanation of what conscious capitalism is?
Sure. So hopefully everybody knows what capitalism is. And I'm a capitalist through and through. But I spent a lot of my career, the first really 20 years of my career in corporate America. And I started to get the feeling that big corporate America had it wrong in terms of just being focused on money and the bottom line. And as we know, pretty much any public company, they're beholden to their shareholders, which is the, capitalistic model. But I think that as a result, they've lost sight of what's really important, which is people. Most companies exist to improve people's lives in some way or another, or make products to benefit people. And also at the core is their employees that are making these products or services in order for them to eventually make money. So the idea behind conscious capitalism is that I kind of like to think of it as a capitalist with a heart. And so the idea is that you have some sort of purpose as a company that is higher than just profits. So it's more than just about making money. Making money is important, but not at the expense of everything else. And so our higher purpose as a company is people. And we believe that if you put people at the center of every decision you make, so whether it's the patients that we're trying to create products for, our employees that work tirelessly for us day in and day out, our investors that give us the capital to keep moving forward. We think about all these different people when we're making big decisions that could potentially affect one group or another. And what I can say is we're 5 years into this company, and by putting people first, the profits have followed. And so I truly believe that the model of conscious capitalism works and gives you really happier employees at the end of the day.
Yeah, it sounds like something Peter Drucker would say. I remember back when I read his book, Task Management and Responsibilities, 8 zillion years ago in the early 80s. The line in there that always caught me is that the purpose of the business is to create and serve a customer. Profit is a result. And
right.
And anybody who ever says to me, I have this conversation a lot, so what's the purpose of your company? Or why do you exist? And they say, well, it's to make money. I said, no, that's a result. What's the purpose of your company? If your purpose is profit, there usually isn't much profit.
Yeah,
and my experience.
My experience in working for these big companies is that, especially employees, they just kind of became a number. And so it was, sort of what have you delivered to the bottom line for me today and this quarter? And if you haven't met or exceeded your goal, then you don't matter to me anymore. And I just don't think that's a sustainable way, to run a company long term.
I would agree with that. And I think that the people, if you look at what's happened to Jack Welch after he left, it looks like he did a great job running GE as far as profits and all that kind of good stuff. The truth was he had so many buried problems that after he left, they all came to the forefront. And just running your company for profit almost always comes back and bites you in the rear end.
That's right. That's right.
So that's my experience. So is your form of conscious capitalism John Mackey's version also, or is it a different version?
No, same.
Okay. John Mackey, for people who don't know, is the founder of Whole Foods and is credited with the founding of the conscious capitalism movement. They even have a magazine, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we have a whole, there's really a global movement, and John has spoken at many of the conferences and written books and that kind of thing.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy, interesting company too. It's really interesting that Amazon owns Whole Foods, and Amazon is pretty much letting Whole Foods run the way they've always run before they became Amazon. And they also did that with Zappos, which is another, although they're not a real conscious capitalism company, they operate as if they were.
That's right.
So I just find that interesting. So whenever I talk about conscious capitalism, there's another form of business that comes along, which is benefit corporations. So do you do anything with benefit corporations, or are you going to become a benefit corp?
We are not. We're a traditional C Corp. When we incorporated, we didn't probably have the foresight to incorporate that way. But I think it's a great business model, and I think the philosophy is you end up giving back a certain % of your proceeds. Is that right?
No, it's actually people plan a profits, and you go through a very in-depth process where you're certified as being a socially conscious company. So you have to go through a process and of basically saying, do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do this? There's a whole. It's worthwhile going through looking at least how if you would qualify or not. If you go to blabs. I think it's .org. It's blabs, and they're the people who certify benefit corporations, and it's a lot of work. And I always tell people, say, if you have a good business reason for it, do it. And a good business reason, by the way, might be if you employ a bunch of millennials or Gen Zs, because those group of folks, they're mission driven, especially millennials, and they want the company they work for to be mission driven too. Mm-hmm. So speaking of that, where do values fit in with your company?
So we have our set of core values, and we have them front and center pretty much daily or weekly at our staff meetings, and we have people internally that are constantly focused on sort of keeping it top of mind for our employees. And so we have core values that might be a little bit different than some. One of our key ones is bravery. And for me, as a woman in business, that was something that took me a while to find courage to speak up in, rooms that were predominantly men. Often I was the only woman. And so that became one of our top core values. And we talk about it. And so people will give examples throughout the week or month or year of how they have exhibited certain values. And it's really great, especially when times get tough. And inevitably in any business, there's going to be ups and downs. But when times are tough and we can fall back on those core values, and that we are a community of people that work together, and we're all in this together, it really seems to make that little bit of difference we need to push through the tough times, and then obviously enjoy the great times.
So when you have bravery is one of your core values, do you have a clarifying statement so everybody in your company knows what bravery means?
We have them listed throughout the building, and we have examples. We have a book. Actually, we're putting out our first book this year for employees that talk about each of the different values and gives examples from the year. We actually stole this idea from Zappos. If you've read they have a culture book, and we thought it was fantastic. And so we're implementing something like that. But I think by keeping it a living, breathing thing where we're talking about it, it's not just a statement. We believe that, bravery can be interpreted in different ways, and how you exhibit that. Maybe it's with a vendor, maybe it's with a customer, a very tough customer that called in and is, you know, you know, difficult to deal with, and how these core values can show up in different aspects of the business.
Yeah, I'm going to encourage you strongly to put a clarifying statement around each of your core values. Let me tell you why. I actually do this exercise every time I lead a workshop. I put people in groups of 8 to 10. I give them a word that they all know the meaning of, or at least they think they know the meaning of. Then I have them write down 10 words which are synonyms of the word we're talking about. It could be trust, it could be vending, it could be money, it could be any of those things. And then I have everybody compare their list to see how many all have the same word on the list. It's never more than 2. It's usually 0 or 1. So what that has taught me, I actually got that from Tony Robbins. I think it's a great exercise that he used to do all the time. I don't know if he still does it. And what I've learned is that we all have what we think is true about a particular word. Unless there's a definition on it, not everyone's on the same page. So it's great to have all the examples, and I think that's a wonderful thing to do. But at the same time, values can be really good teaching tools. So if you have bravery and you have a clarifying statement around it, and you have somebody who is not being brave, you can bring them to that clarifying statement that says, here's what we're talking about, and here's why this is important. Now, do you understand that? And they will either say yes or no. In bravery, bravery is a pretty, we sort of know when someone's being brave and not brave, although I think we could get into a lot of argument about that by just using the word. Some people, bravery is trying, and other people's bravery is getting out of their comfort zone. And to me, those are two very different things, and they can be interpreted differently. So, if I was to say bravery at
Eosera.
Eosera, I'm having a hard time today. With Eosera is getting out of your comfort zone, and for somebody else, bravery means trying. So no, trying is not for being brave here. Getting out of your comfort zone is brave. And that's why I think it's so important to really have that. I became values obsessed in 1982, and the reason it happened, I was the worst manager of all times, and I realized that values were important, and the value that I was trying to exhibit, which I did not exhibit up to that point, was personal responsibility, which for me means I don't blame, I don't justify, I take responsibility for everything that happens in my life, whether I can control it or not. That's just for me. Now, for a company, we just say we take responsibility for everything that happens within our company, period. So it doesn't leave any room for excuses, which I hate, but that's, So at any rate, that's there's my
that's
soapbox for why clarifying statements are so important. And once you do that, then you get to build pillars around that, which are, things that support whatever those values are. And they become really easy, good tools to work with. So there's my, free advice is worth, don't you? Not much. So let's talk about your company for a while. How did you guys, you left corporate America, which is a pretty brave thing to do. And then you started up your own startup company. What was the biggest roadblock you faced getting your company started?
Fear.
Okay. And how did you get past the fear?
Yeah, so I think there wasn't one direct path, but I think for me, writing down my fears was a big part of it. So I'm a big fan of journaling, and I feel like it's a way for me to interpret what I'm internalizing and recognize it. And I think that's half the battle, especially with fear, is sometimes we don't even admit to ourselves that we are scared. What it came down for me was, the fear of failure, fear of what people might think of me, fear of the unknown. And once I kind of got all that down on paper, I was able to sort of start checking off, okay, well, that's not that bad. And that's not that bad. If you can be more tangible with the fears. And so that was the biggest hurdle. And then really figuring out what we wanted to do. So my business partner and I had both spent about 15 years in the eye care industry. And we knew we wanted to stay in healthcare, but we weren't set on what kind of products that we wanted to create. And so figuring that out was probably the second biggest hurdle.
So did you go to the marketplace to figure that out, or did you just bring it to the marketplace and say, here it is?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of letting the market tell you what it needs and then go building something to fulfill that void. I've seen it done the other way. Build something great, creative, and then try to push it.
You're not from the Steve Jobs school.
I'm not. And so we spent the first 3 months just talking to doctors. So any doctor that would take a lunch, breakfast, dinner, coffee with us, we would take that 15, 20 minutes with them. And we had a series of questions, sort of like market research, that we would ask. And at the end, we would always ask, what is something that is a common condition that patients come in complaining about that you think should be able to be treated at home, but there is just no good remedy. And earwax impaction was something that plagued the elderly and children and everybody in between. So we talked to pediatricians, geriatricians, regular GPs, and earwax impaction. It's the number one reason that hearing aids fail to work properly. And it can lead to delays in auditory development in young children. And it's just a nuisance for people, sort of in between those stages of life where they feel like they're losing their hearing because wax is just jammed down in there. But nothing existed over the counter that actually worked. And so we took that as our first target and spent about 9 months in a lab here in Texas. And we had local doctors sending us human earwax that they would extract from patients and put in a little test tube and mail it off to us. And we figured out how to dissolve it down.
Is that what your product does? You just put it in and it dissolves the earwax?
That's what our first product does, yes, Earwax MD. And so it dissolves wax in about 15 minutes. And then you rinse the ear canal out just with warm water. Because once you dissolve it, you got to get it out.
Right. That's pretty cool. I might have to try it myself.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking at your earbud or your AirPod with the increased use of devices in our ears. It actually is increasing the rate of impaction. And so, because when we stick something in our ear, it's pushing that wax further down. And you probably are like most people, you pull that AirPod out and you look at it and you're like, ooh, what's that on that? Or maybe you have pristine ears, but maybe you're not.
No. I have custom. I have a pair of custom headphones I had made for me, and about every 10 days I have to spend 15 minutes cleaning them. So,
right.
It's disgusting. That's all there is to it.
Imagine playing with that in the lab and having to.
Yeah, you're a brave person.
My business partner did more of that.
Okay. So is your product patented, or is it something that? Oh, it is. Okay.
So our first product is patented. We actually we filed the patent in 2016, and we had it granted this year. So it takes a while.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, are you guys funded with outside money, or is it all your own money?
We started the first year, we used our own money. Mm-hmm. And then we won $50,000 in a business pitch competition, which we used to run a human clinical trial. And then, so once we had proof of concept and some clinical data, then we went to raise money from angel investors. And we raised 1.2 million in the first round and about 800,000 in the second round. So about 2 million total. And then we're profitable now.
What is your exit strategy for your investors?
So our exit strategy is to sell to a larger multinational strategic that could take these products and take them around the world. They've already got the infrastructures built in place. They've already, got retail distribution around the world. We're focused right now just on building that U.S. business, and then it'll be time to sell it off. And we're kind of building out product lines so that we could sell off ear care. We're about to enter the nasal category. So that could be a separate business that we continue to grow if we sell one off. But that's the plan. We'll see if that happens or not.
So if you sell one of yours off and you keep the rest of it, you cash out your investors and become totally private at that point?
That would be one scenario. Yeah, we don't have anything locked into place. Kind of depends on what products are left at the time, and that'll be a negotiation.
That makes sense. So if you had to give somebody, I hate this question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyhow.
Why not?
Why not? It's one of those days. What can I say? So if you had one piece of advice to give to somebody who was going to, run a business, has been in business for 20 years or so, and is sort of stuck, what would that one piece of advice be?
Okay, so advice to somebody that's been in business for 20 years, or that wants to start a new business?
No, it's been in business for 20 years. Someone's been in business for a long time, and they're kind of stuck. What would be the one thing you might tell them that could help them get unstuck?
For us, that has been to not be afraid to ask for help or to ask for outside opinions. And I believe that nobody builds a business alone. And that, especially if we've been in our business and sort of focused for so long, we kind of can lose sight of potential opportunities that are on the periphery. And it's nice to have other people's opinions or ideas. A lot of business owners get closed off to other people's ideas. They think they know it all. And reality is nobody ever knows it all. So I'm part of several different business networks. YPO is one of them. Conscious Capital is another one. And I love those resources.
So how did YPO change their membership requirements? Because it used to be you had to have 50 employees back when I was in YPO.
Yeah, no, there's not an employee requirement at this point. It was more revenue requirements.
What's the revenue requirement these days, just out of curiosity?
I believe it's 10 million.
No,
but
okay.
it's different for different industries.
Yeah, banking had sort of weird rules with it.
Yeah.
Back when I joined IPO in the dark ages, it was 50 employees and $5 million. But that was 1983. So.
Yeah, things change. And, with private equity now, it's totally different. It just kind of depends on the business you have.
Yeah. YPO is a great organization. I was a member, and I am a big, big fan of peer-to-peer groups. Yeah. And if you get a chance, this is just a little bit off thing. If you can find the manual for moderator training that YPL uses and use it in your own peer-to-peer group, you will have a much better peer-to-peer group.
Yep.
YPL does the best training for peer-to-peers of anybody in the country, and I've talked to dozens of others, and nobody comes close. So, Elyse, unfortunately, we are out of time. I've had a good time wanting you all over the world. So I'm going to say, well, she's kind of interesting. I think I might want to find her. So how would they do that?
So you can go to our website. It's www.earcaremd.com or eosera.com. And you can find ways to contact us there and see our product line. And feel free to reach out.
And I will be doing that myself. So I have something I would like you to do also. I've been kind of obsessed with what I call the sale-ready company. And by the way, a sale-ready company does not mean you're going to sell your company. Let me repeat that. You are not going to sell your company. You are going to have your company ready for sale, which is a completely different thing. When you have a sale-ready company, it means you've created a company somebody else would want to own. But when you do that, you're not likely to sell it because you'll be making too much money and having too much fun. So I wrote an ebook on how to create a sale-ready company. It's easy to get. You go to www.sustainablebusiness.co, that's .co, not .com, /sale ready, and you can get our ebook on the 8 steps it takes to sell your company. So this is Josh Patrick. We're with Elyse Dickerson. You're at Cracking the Cashflow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.